Have you ever wondered what happens when the ideals of justice clash with the brutal reality of war? When a soldier's life becomes just a number in a general's ambition? Today, we read diving deep into one of the most powerful anti-war films ever made, Stanley Kubrick's 1957 masterpiece, Paths of Glory. This isn't just a war movie. It's a searing indictment of military hypocrisy and a timeless story about the fight for human dignity in the face of overwhelming power. So grab your gear because we're heading to the trenches. The year is 1916. The First World War is a bloody stalemate, and we find ourselves in the French trenches. The atmosphere is grim, a muddy, rat-infested labyrinth where life is cheap. We meet our protagonist, Colonel Dax, played by the legendary Kirk Douglas. Dax is a former criminal defense lawyer, a man who still believes in justice and the value of his men's lives. He's a stark contrast to the high command, who view the war from the comfort of a luxurious chateau, far from the front lines. Our story kicks into gear with a seemingly impossible order. The ambitious and cynical General Broulard arrives at the chateau and dangles a promotion in front of his subordinate. General Mireau, the price? Mireau's division must capture a heavily fortified German position known as the Ant Hill. Mireau initially protests, calling the mission impossible and a certain death sentence for his men. He knows the casualties will be catastrophic. But the moment Broulard mentions a potential promotion, Mireau's principles vanish. His ambition overrides his duty of care. He eagerly agrees to the attack, his mind already on the glory he believes he will gain. Mireau visits the trenches to motivate his troops. But his idea of motivation is cold and detached. He asks soldiers absurd questions and shows a complete lack of empathy for their suffering from shell shock, which he dismisses as cowardice. This scene perfectly establishes the vast, unbridgeable gap between the men who fight the war and the men who command it. Colonel Dax, witnessing this, is disgusted. He knows the attack on the anthill is a suicide mission, and he argues fiercely with Mireau, but his protests are dismissed. The order stands. The attack begins. As Dax predicted, it's a complete slaughter. Machine gun fire tears through the French soldiers as they charge into no man's land. The first wave is decimated. The second wave, seeing the massacre, refuses to leave the relative safety of the trenches. They are paralyzed by terror, and who could blame them? From his observation post, General Mireau is enraged. He sees the second wave's hesitation not as a natural reaction to certain death, but as an act of cowardice and insubordination. In a fit of blind fury, he orders his own artillery to fire on his own men to force them out of the trenches. He literally wants to shell his own soldiers to make them attack. The artillery commander, rightfully horrified, refuses the order without written confirmation. A small act of defiance that saves countless lives but seals Mireau's fate in a way he doesn't yet realize. The attack is a catastrophic failure. The French forces don't gain an inch of ground, and the losses are immense. But General Mireau isn't concerned with the dead. He's concerned with his reputation. Furious and humiliated, he decides to make an example of the division to cover for his own disastrous leadership. He demands that 100 men from the regiment be executed for cowardice. General Broulard, ever the politician, thinks this is a bit extreme. He negotiates Mireau down. Not 100 men, but 3. 1 man from each company will be chosen by their commanders to be court-martialed and executed. The charges? Cowardice in the face of the enemy. The selection process itself is a mockery of justice. 1 soldier, Corporal Paris, is chosen because his commanding officer, a drunk and cowardly lieutenant, wants to silence him. Paris witnessed the lieutenant kill one of their own men in a panic during a patrol. Another soldier, Private Farrell, is chosen simply because he is a social undesirable, and the third, Private Arnaud, is chosen by lottery. Their fates are sealed not by their actions, but by malice, prejudice, and pure chance. This is where Colonel Dax steps in. As a lawyer in civilian life, he is appalled by this grotesque injustice. He volunteers to serve as the defense attorney for the 3 condemned men. What follows is one of the most intense and compelling courtroom dramas in cinema history. Even though the courtroom is a makeshift hall in a grand chateau, the court-martial is a sham from the very beginning. The presiding judge is a close ally of General Mireau. Key evidence is disallowed. No written indictment is provided. Witnesses who could prove the men's innocence are not allowed to testify. Dax argues passionately and brilliantly. He points out the absurdity of the charges, the impossibility of the mission, and the bravery the men have shown in countless other battles. He exposes the selection process as corrupt and arbitrary. But it's all for nothing. The court is a kangaroo court. The verdict is a foregone conclusion. The 3 men are found guilty and sentenced to death by firing squad. Dax is devastated but not defeated. He makes a last-ditch effort to save his men. He goes to General Broulard, presenting him with sworn affidavits proving that General Mireau ordered his own artillery to fire on his men. Dax believes this bombshell evidence will surely expose the entire charade and save the 3 soldiers. Broulard seems interested, but not for the reasons Dax hopes. He sees the information not as a tool for justice, but as a political weapon to get rid of the now problematic General Mireau. He calmly informs Dax that it's too late to stop the executions. The morale of the army, he claims, depends on it. The execution scene is one of the most harrowing and unforgettable sequences in film history. The 3 condemned men are marched out at dawn. One of them, Private Arnaud, had gotten into a fight and suffered a skull fracture the night before. He's unconscious on a stretcher, but the military doctors revive him just so he can be conscious for his own execution. It's a moment of supreme bureaucratic cruelty. Colonel Dax watches, his face a mask of grief and impotent rage, as his men are tied to posts and executed by their own comrades. The shots ring out, and justice dies with them. Later that day, Dax is summoned by General Broulard. Broulard is cheerful. He informs Dax that he has launched an inquiry into Mireau's conduct, and that Mireau will be held accountable. Then, in a moment of stunning cynicism, he offers Mireau's command to Dax. He completely misreads Dax's character, assuming that Dax's fight was motivated by personal ambition, just like his own. This is the climax of the film. Kirk Douglas unleashes a torrent of righteous fury. He calls Broulard a degenerate, sadistic old man and tells him exactly what he thinks of him and the corrupt system he represents. "You're going to have to find somebody else to command that regiment," Dax spits, before turning his back and walking away, leaving Broulard momentarily speechless, stunned that someone could possibly reject such a cynical and self-serving worldview. The film ends on a quiet, deeply moving note. Dax's regiment is at a local tavern, waiting to be sent back to the front. They are rowdy and jeering as a captured German girl is brought onto the stage to sing for them. Her song is a simple German folk tune. As she begins to sing, her voice filled with fear and sadness, the mood in the tavern slowly changes. The soldiers' crude jeers die down. They begin to hum along, their faces softening. Many are moved to tears. In this moment, they see not an enemy, but a fellow human being, someone as scared and lost as they are. The song transcends the boundaries of language and nationality, reminding them and us of their shared humanity. Colonel Dax watches from the doorway. He receives an order that his men must return to the front immediately. But seeing this brief, fragile moment of peace and human connection, he tells the messenger to give the men a few more minutes. The film ends on Dax's face, a complex expression of sorrow, empathy, and perhaps a flicker of hope. Paths of Glory is more than just a movie. It's a profound statement about the absurdity of war and the corruption of power. Kubrick masterfully shows us that the real enemy isn't always on the other side of no man's land. Sometimes it's in the halls of power, wearing the same uniform as you. The film asks us to question authority, to fight for justice even when it seems hopeless, and to never forget the humanity of the individual, even in the midst of an inhuman conflict. It's a message that was powerful in 1957, and it remains just as vital and relevant today. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into a cinematic classic. If you enjoyed this analysis, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next video. What are your thoughts on Paths of Glory? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time.